In the remote stretches of northwestern China lies a landscape that once seemed forsaken, a vast expanse of desert scarred by relentless winds and choking sandstorms. For generations, this was a place where nothing could flourish, where the very elements conspired against life itself. Yet today, something extraordinary is unfolding across these barren plains. Something that challenges everything we thought we knew about renewable energy and ecological restoration. More than 8,000 workers have accomplished what many deemed impossible. They've converted this lifeless terrain into the planet's most ambitious solar power installation, a technological marvel that stretches beyond the limits of imagination. But this story isn't just about engineering prowess or renewable energy targets. It's about an unexpected partnership between cutting-edge technology and one of humanity's oldest agricultural practices. It's about 300,000 sheep that have become unlikely heroes in the global fight against climate change. Before we dive deeper into this remarkable tale of innovation and adaptation, if you appreciate content that explores groundbreaking developments in sustainability and technology, please consider subscribing. Your support helps us bring you more stories about how human ingenuity is reshaping our world. Now let's venture into the heart of China's desert solar revolution. The Talatan region in Qinghai province tells a story of extremes. Situated on the Tibetan plateau, this area was once synonymous with desolation. Government surveys revealed a staggering statistic: nearly 98.5% of the land here had succumbed to desertification. Imagine a territory where for dozens of kilometers in every direction, you'd encounter nothing but sand, rock, and the howling wind. No villages, no farms, no signs of human habitation whatsoever. This wasn't just an empty space on a map. It represented a harsh reality faced by many regions across China's western territories. Decades of environmental degradation, shifting climate patterns, and natural geological processes had turned once usable land into an inhospitable wasteland. Most governments would have written off such areas as lost causes, focusing development efforts elsewhere. But Chinese planners saw something different. They saw potential. In 2012, a bold vision took shape. Government officials and energy experts proposed something that seemed almost absurd in its ambition: construct a 600 square kilometer solar power complex in this very desert. To put that into perspective, we're talking about an area larger than many major cities, a solar installation so massive it would be visible from space. The skeptics were numerous. How would you transport materials to such a remote location? How would you protect delicate solar equipment from savage sandstorms? How would you maintain millions of panels in such harsh conditions? These weren't trivial concerns. They were fundamental challenges that could doom the entire project. Yet the advantages were equally compelling. The region sits at an elevation of nearly 3,000 meters above sea level, where the air is thin and clear. This altitude, combined with the area's geographic position, delivers over 3,000 hours of direct sunlight annually. That's more than 8 hours of sunshine every single day on average, an energy goldmine waiting to be tapped. Additionally, the complete absence of human settlement meant no displacement of communities, no conflicts over land use, and no light pollution or atmospheric interference to reduce panel efficiency. The very factors that made this land uninhabitable for traditional purposes made it perfect for solar energy generation. Given the unprecedented scale of the vision, Chinese engineers adopted a strategic approach. Rather than attempting to build everything at once, a logistical nightmare, they divided the project into 7 distinct phases. This phased methodology allowed for learning, adaptation, and course correction as challenges emerged. The first phase alone represented an investment of $300 million. To appreciate the magnitude of this initial stage, consider that it covered 78 square kilometers. Engineers like to describe this using a more relatable comparison. Imagine 10,000 football fields placed side by side, and you begin to grasp the sheer physical scope of what was being built. Constructing in such an environment meant confronting obstacles most solar projects never face. Every component, every panel, every mounting structure, every meter of cabling had to be transported across difficult terrain. Workers operated in extreme conditions, dealing with temperature swings that could see scorching heat during the day and near freezing cold at night. The altitude meant lower oxygen levels, making physical labor more exhausting. Yet by December 2019, the first phase achieved a milestone that validated the entire concept. The facility began feeding electricity into China's power grid. The output wasn't trivial. This initial section alone now provides reliable electrical power to approximately 3 million households annually. That's enough energy to meet the daily needs of a population roughly equivalent to a major metropolitan area. But electricity generation was only the beginning of this story. What happened next would transform this project from merely an impressive engineering achievement into something far more innovative, a model that's now being studied and replicated around the globe. Solar panels are remarkably simple devices at their core. They convert sunlight into electricity through the photovoltaic effect, a principle of physics discovered in the 19th century. The technology is clean, renewable, and increasingly affordable. However, it has one critical vulnerability. Efficiency plummets when the panels get dirty or shaded. In desert environments, this presents a constant battle. Wind-blown sand accumulates on panel surfaces, creating a film that blocks incoming light. During major sandstorms, entire sections can be buried under layers of dust within hours. For solar installations worldwide, cleaning panels represents one of the largest ongoing operational expenses. Traditional approaches involve either manual cleaning crews, laborers who physically wipe down each panel, or mechanized water spray systems. Some facilities employ robotic cleaners that traverse along the panel arrays. All these methods share common drawbacks. They're expensive, labor-intensive, and in water-scarce desert regions, they consume precious water resources. Research from the solar industry indicates that major installations can spend millions of dollars annually just on cleaning and maintenance. Over a facility's 25 to 30-year operational lifespan, these costs compound dramatically, eating into the economic viability of the entire project. At Talatan, however, the engineers discovered something entirely unexpected during routine maintenance operations. As workers used water to wash the panels, that moisture didn't simply evaporate into the dry desert air. Instead, it seeped into the ground below, where it performed a small miracle. Seeds that had lain dormant in the sand, perhaps for years or even decades, suddenly had the moisture they needed to germinate. Within weeks, staff noticed something remarkable. Green shoots were pushing up through the sand beneath and around the solar arrays. Grass was growing. In a place where botanical surveys had declared the land essentially dead, life was returning. Initially, this seemed like a wonderful bonus, an unexpected environmental benefit to complement the clean energy production. The staff even encouraged this development, deliberately planting additional grass species beneath the panels. They envisioned creating a green oasis in the desert, a living demonstration that renewable energy development and ecological restoration could go hand in hand. The grass thrived beyond anyone's expectations. The solar panels themselves created microclimates beneath them. During the intense daytime heat, the panels provided shade, reducing surface temperatures and slowing moisture evaporation from the soil. This created conditions far more favorable for plant growth than the exposed desert just meters away. The vegetation brought multiple benefits. The root systems helped bind the sandy soil, reducing erosion and stabilizing the ground beneath the panel mounting structures. The grass cover meant less loose sand to be picked up by wind and deposited on the panels. From an ecological perspective, the transformation was stunning. Biodiversity began returning to an area that had been essentially lifeless. But as any farmer knows, plants don't stop growing just because it's convenient. Within months, the grass presented a new crisis. Vegetation grew tall enough to cast shadows on the lower portions of solar panels, reducing their light exposure. In some sections, particularly lush growth threatened to overtangle with wiring and mounting structures. There was an even more dangerous concern: fire risk. During dry seasons, dead grass accumulates and becomes incredibly flammable. In many grassland ecosystems, wildfires are a natural part of the cycle. But at a solar facility with millions of panels and kilometers of cabling, a single spark could trigger a catastrophe. The potential loss wasn't just financial, it threatened the entire project's viability. The operations team found themselves in a peculiar dilemma. The grass that had seemed like such a blessing now demanded a solution. Several options presented themselves, none ideal. They could employ teams of workers to manually cut the grass, but with 78 square kilometers to cover, and this was just the first phase, the labor costs would be astronomical. Workers would need to traverse the entire facility regularly throughout the growing season. This would pull staff away from their primary duties of monitoring systems, maintaining equipment, and optimizing energy production. Mechanical mowing equipment was another possibility. Large riding mowers or even specialized agricultural machinery could handle the task more efficiently than hand tools. However, the solar panel arrays weren't designed with mowing equipment in mind. The spacing between panels, the mounting structures, the buried cables, all created obstacles for machinery. There was also the significant risk of accidental damage. One careless moment could destroy panels worth thousands of dollars. Chemical herbicides represented a third option, but this approach carried serious problems. The facility was already demonstrating environmental benefits by supporting plant life and potentially restoring degraded land. Spraying chemicals would undermine those ecological gains. Moreover, herbicides require careful application, ongoing costs, and raise concerns about long-term environmental impact. The most straightforward solution, simply removing the grass entirely and returning to bare sand, defeated the purpose. The grass was providing soil stabilization, reducing wind-blown dust, and creating a more favorable microclimate. Eliminating it would mean losing those benefits and potentially returning to the original problem of constant sand accumulation on the panels. The engineering team was stuck. Every conventional solution involved trade-offs that seemed to undermine the project's success in one way or another. Then came an idea that was simultaneously ancient and innovative. One engineer on the team suggested something that might have seemed absurd if it weren't so elegantly simple. What if they brought in sheep? For thousands of years, pastoral communities across China and Central Asia have grazed livestock on grasslands. Sheep, in particular, are nature's lawn mowers. They're highly efficient at consuming vegetation, they're relatively gentle on the land, and they provide economic value through meat and wool production. The proposal was to introduce a flock of sheep into the solar facility and let them do what they do naturally: graze. The sheep would consume the excess grass, keeping vegetation at manageable levels. No manual labor required, no expensive machinery, no chemicals, just animals doing what evolution had designed them to do. Of course, the idea raised immediate questions. Would sheep damage the panels? Would they chew through cables? Would their movement destabilize mounting structures or create maintenance problems? The only way to find out was through careful experimentation. The team started small, very small. They introduced just 80 sheep into a test section of the facility. These animals would serve as pioneers, helping the staff understand how this human technology nature system might function. But there was an immediate practical problem. The solar panels were mounted quite low to the ground, originally positioned just 50 centimeters above the surface. This low profile made sense from an engineering standpoint. It reduced wind loading and made installation easier. However, it meant adult sheep couldn't comfortably pass beneath the panels to access the grass growing underneath. The solution required thinking differently about the entire installation design. Engineers redesigned the mounting systems, raising the panels from 50 centimeters to 120 centimeters above ground level. This created enough clearance for sheep to move freely throughout the facility, accessing vegetation beneath and between the panel rows. This modification demonstrates the adaptive thinking that characterizes successful innovation. Rather than abandoning the sheep idea when faced with a technical incompatibility, the team modified the infrastructure itself. They recognized that the long-term benefits, reduced maintenance costs, ecological gains, and potential agricultural revenue, justified the redesign investment. The trial period lasted just over 2 months, but those weeks proved transformative. The results exceeded even the optimists' expectations. The sheep took to their new environment with remarkable ease. They grazed contentedly on the grass growing beneath and around the solar panels, efficiently consuming the vegetation that had been causing problems. Their grazing patterns were naturally varied. They didn't strip areas bare but moved around, creating a more diverse grass landscape. Observations revealed additional benefits that hadn't been fully anticipated. As the sheep moved through the facility, they naturally disturbed accumulated dust and sand on lower portions of the panels, effectively providing a gentle cleaning action. While they couldn't reach the full panel surface, their presence meant less buildup overall. The sheep's excrement provided another advantage. In the nutrient-poor desert soil, this natural fertilizer enriched the earth, promoting healthier grass growth, which in turn provided better forage for the sheep. A closed-loop ecosystem was emerging, one where technology and nature supported each other. Temperature monitoring revealed that areas with active grazing maintained better thermal characteristics. The grass cover, kept at optimal height by the sheep, helped moderate ground temperatures, which indirectly benefited panel efficiency. Cooler conditions mean better photovoltaic performance. Perhaps most importantly, the fire risk plummeted. With sheep constantly consuming fresh growth and removing dead material as part of their foraging, the accumulation of dry, flammable vegetation essentially disappeared. The threat of catastrophic fire, which had loomed as a worst-case scenario, was neutralized by the simplest of means. Scaling up from a small experiment to a full-scale revolution, the success of the trial flock prompted an ambitious expansion. If 80 sheep could manage a test section effectively, just imagine what a larger flock could accomplish across the entire facility. The project team made a strategic decision. Instead of simply hiring more workers and buying more sheep, they would partner with local herders. This approach brought a whole range of advantages. Experienced herders already knew how to manage flocks effectively. Their traditional knowledge was, honestly, invaluable. Local communities would benefit economically from the arrangement, fostering goodwill and a shared interest in the facility's success. The partnership model proved remarkably effective. Herders received access to quality grazing land, which is a precious resource in desert regions. In exchange, their flocks provided natural maintenance services for the solar facility. Both parties benefited from an arrangement that built on each side's strengths. By 2023, the transformation was complete. The photovoltaic park now hosts an astonishing population of more than 300,000 sheep, distributed across 270 dedicated pens strategically positioned throughout the facility. What was once a purely technological installation has become something hybrid, part power plant, part managed grassland, and part agricultural operation. These sheep have even earned an affectionate local nickname, photovoltaic shepherds. It's a term that really captures the essential role they play in maintaining the facility's operations. These aren't just sheep that happen to live near solar panels. They're integral components of the entire system's functionality. Data collected from the mature operation provides some fascinating insights into this model's efficiency. A single adult sheep consumes about 5 pounds of vegetation daily. Multiply that by hundreds of thousands of animals, and you're looking at an incredible amount of natural grass management happening every single day, all without human intervention. The work ethic of these animals is honestly remarkable. Sheep spend the vast majority of their waking hours foraging. They're not distracted by phones or bored by routine. Eating grass is literally what they're built to do. This makes them phenomenally reliable employees in the maintenance operation. Research from the facility indicates that approximately 1,000 sheep can thoroughly graze more than 1,000 acres in just 2 weeks. This rate of coverage means the entire facility receives regular natural maintenance without requiring armies of human workers or fleets of machines. The operational requirements from the human side are minimal. Staff primarily need to ensure adequate water supplies are available, a relatively simple infrastructure need, just drinking troughs and water lines. Compared to the complex demands of mechanical or chemical maintenance systems, this is elegance itself. Word of Talatan's innovative approach has spread rapidly through international renewable energy circles. The combination of practical effectiveness, cost efficiency, and environmental benefits has attracted attention from solar developers and energy planners worldwide. Multiple countries have now initiated pilot programs based on the Chinese model. In regions ranging from the Middle East to the American Southwest, solar facilities are experimenting with integrating livestock grazing into their operations. Each location adapts the basic concept to local conditions. Different sheep breeds, different grazing patterns, different vegetation types, but the core principle remains the same. The economics are compelling enough to drive adoption even without environmental considerations. Solar facilities typically budget substantial ongoing costs for maintenance and cleaning. Shifting much of that expense to a self-sustaining agricultural model dramatically improves project economics. Over a 25-year operational lifespan, the savings can amount to tens of millions of dollars. From an environmental perspective, the benefits extend beyond the immediate facility grounds. The restoration of grassland ecosystems in desert regions has cascading effects. Plant life means habitat for insects, which attracts birds, which can support small mammals. Biodiversity that had been absent for decades begins returning. The soil improvements are equally significant. Erosion decreases as root systems bind sand and soil. Organic matter from plant decay and animal waste enriches what had been essentially sterile sand. Over years and decades, genuine soil formation occurs. A process that typically takes centuries is accelerated through this managed system. Local communities benefit economically and socially. Herders gain access to productive grazing land, supporting traditional livelihoods that might otherwise be under pressure from modernization. The partnership between high-tech energy production and traditional pastoral agriculture creates bridges between different sectors of the economy. One concern that might occur to observers is whether the sheep pose any risk to the sophisticated equipment surrounding them. After all, we're talking about animals with free access to a facility containing millions of dollars worth of delicate solar panels and electrical infrastructure. In practice, this concern has proven largely unfounded. Sheep are not naturally destructive animals. Their temperament is generally docile and non-aggressive. Unlike goats, which are notorious for climbing on objects and chewing anything available, sheep tend to focus their attention downward on the grass beneath their feet. Behavioral observations over years of operation confirm that the sheep show little interest in the solar panels themselves. The panels don't provide food, so the animals simply ignore them. Cables and wiring, when properly installed and maintained, similarly attract no attention from the flock. This reliable behavior pattern is one reason why the model translates well to different contexts. Facility operators don't need to constantly supervise the sheep or worry about repairs from animal damage. The sheep do their job, eating grass, and leave the technology to do its job undisturbed. The integration represents something deeper than just practical coexistence. It embodies a philosophy that's gaining traction in sustainability circles. The idea that technology and nature don't have to be adversaries. Instead of viewing environmental protection and economic development as opposing forces, this model demonstrates their potential for synergy. No innovation succeeds without confronting challenges, and the Talatan model has taught important lessons along the way. Not every aspect of the operation has been smooth from the start. Water management remains an ongoing consideration. While sheep are relatively hardy animals adapted to arid conditions, they still require regular access to drinking water. In a desert environment, ensuring adequate water supply for hundreds of thousands of animals requires careful planning and infrastructure investment. Health management of such a large flock presents its own complexities. Veterinary care, disease prevention, and monitoring for illness or injury across such a vast population demands coordination between facility operators and herding communities. Establishing effective protocols has been a learning process. Seasonal variations in grass growth create periods of abundance and scarcity. During peak growing seasons, vegetation can still outpace the flock's grazing capacity, requiring supplemental management. Conversely, during dormant seasons, ensuring adequate nutrition for the sheep may require supplemental feeding.